White Sox fans, welcome into Sox on Tap. It's Johnny Nani alongside my guys Tony on Tap and NWI Steve coming at you here as the White Sox make some coaching changes. How you doing tonight, gentlemen?
We're doing some things here. It's obviously the end of the Mr. Clean era, so pour one out for him. So a little bit of a transitional period here for the ball club. Interesting times to say the least.
I'm surprised Steven isn't jumping for joy, but we all know he was a Pedro guy the whole entire time, Johnny. You know, he's probably in his feels right now. I'm doing fucking ecstatic, Johnny. It's good to be here. It's the start of the weekend, as you know. It's Thursday night. We're talking some White Sox baseball, and we don't have Pedro Grifol in our lives anymore. I don't know if I've been this happy on a podcast with you, Johnny, since the day that Jeremy Colleton was let go from the Chicago Blackhawks. So we'll talk about all that. Although, as we know, and I've discussed this with Steven before, it can get worse.
Right.
So there's some things I want to ask Steven how he feels about some coaching changes as we get into the show. But for all intents and purposes, as you guys have both alluded to, Mr. Clean is gone. We're switching our cleaning products. Maybe we've got a full-on brand new toilet that we can shit on every day when we watch this team, and we don't have to flush it a million times to get our next victory. Who knows? But I'm happy to not have to be flushing it all the time, Johnny. How are you, man?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of many problems that needed to be eradicated from the White Sox organization, right? So we'll get a little bit more in depth on what the coaching changes actually entail, reflect a little bit on the Mr. Clean tenure. God, what a terrible time. We'll talk about that avoidance of the MLB record losing streak, although they did tie the AL one. We'll dive into a little bit of that. But before we do, make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet. Check out the website at ontapsportsnet.com and give us a follow on the socials at Sox On Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet. And if you're in the comments, go ahead, jump in. Let's hear your take on the White Sox shakeup today. Let's start from the top. First announcement came out that Mr. Clean was relieved of his duties. Guys, I think we all expected this, but your initial reaction to this?
You know, it's something that has been widely speculated for a little bit over a week now. I mean, there was rumor and innuendo going on back last Wednesday, and obviously took a little bit of time. I still don't understand why they allowed him to board the plane and go out to the West Coast even. Some people were kind of speculating that they didn't want to fire him in the middle of this epic losing streak, that they wanted him to get a win before they fired him, which I don't think makes a whole lot of sense. So what if they would have won the game yesterday? You would have fired a guy on a 2-game winning streak. It just very bizarre timing.
Makes sense, Steve.
I mean, true. Nothing this organization does ever really is logical or makes any kind of sense here. But, we all kind of expected this was going to come. And I think at the end of the day, there was maybe a little bit of skepticism still that Jerry was just going to ride things out through the end of the season here, because that's just kind of what he does. But they took, the first step in trying to, sterilize this organization by getting rid of this moron. And, we'll see kind of what comes of this. I think, Bob already put it out there as far as, who might be waiting in the wings on this. And it's a name that I've been hearing for a couple of months already, but, we'll see what happens.
My initial reaction to this is a little bit of deja vu, because I believe we were here around this time last year, maybe a week off, talking about Kenny and Rick Hahn getting the axe from Jerry sometime last August. And I think in that moment, I was very, very happy that there was going to be a change in direction in the organization. Now, little did I know it was going to go this way. Probably should have expected it. That said, I have to say my initial reaction is I'm nervous at how much worse it can get behind Pedro Grifol. That is an honest feeling that I'm feeling right now, guys, is there is now an opportunity for Chris Getz to fuck this up even more than where we're sitting right now. And I think that's something that's sort of on the table. So that's honestly where my mind goes. It shouldn't be. should be, like, as I said in the intro, very happy with this. I'm happy that this wrong has been righted. There's been accountability. As Steven knows, there's never an accountability problem with the Chicago White Sox. But now I'm just hoping that they get things right. That is my initial reaction with this. I hope they don't screw this up.
Yeah, yep. I'm right there with you, Tony. It's always lingering in the back of your mind. And obviously, as long as Jerry Reinsdorf owns the teams, I feel like we're all going to have those sort of thoughts swirling in our mind whenever any sort of organizational change is made, or, something that should be, celebratory in a way, but for the better. And we saw how that went last year, right? It was like a 2-3 day period of hope before they just moved on to Chris Getz. Yeah, I know that
to get this fixed sooner,
right? And they had, and we've heard multiple times them go back on their word on certain things in terms of manager search in entering 2020 season, right? So I know Chris Getz said that in his remarks regarding Pedro Grifol's dismissal, that the next hire will most likely be from outside the organization. But I don't know any White Sox fan that's fully bought in on that. Feel like it's the press X to doubt meme. That's kind of where I'm at on there. But the initial to Pedro being gone, I mean, it was long overdue. I will say, entering the season, I had thought that he would probably wear it for the entire season, but it got to a point of futility where someone's had needed a role, and fair or not, Pedro Grifol, that was the easiest change to make in season right now. So let's talk about the new guy stepping into the chair. Steve, do we have another inside job on our hands here with former Cleveland Indian Grady Sizemore taking over? That's what I need to know first right off the bat.
I'm reaching out to multiple sources here to try to get confirmation on this. The early reports are not good. Everybody kind of remembers that period, 2004 till maybe 2009, 2010, when on the field, Grady Sizemore was a tremendous pain in the ass. I can share, a funny Grady Sizemore moment for our listeners here. Back in July of 2009, I was attending a ball game. I think it was on a Tuesday or Wednesday night with three of my buddies from high school. We were sitting in the front row in right center field. There is section 101. And, Sizemore was playing center field for Cleveland. And that was the night Paul Konerko famously hit 3 home runs in one game, something that I don't think Carlos Lee ever did. I mean, I can't imagine being a loser and thinking that Carlos Lee was more impactful to the White Sox organization than Paul Konerko was. But that's not what you call
friggin' believable.
Friggin' believable. It truly is, Hawkaroo. It truly is. And, you had yourself quite a night on the mic that evening there. But, friend of mine from high school, had his phone out, and he did a little bit of research, did a little bit of digging, found out that Grady's mother, her first name was Donna. And so, we may or may not have made a lot of comments at Donna Sizemore's expense. So I don't know if he's going to remember this 15 years, removed from the incident here. And, the Sox really blew out Cleveland that night. I want to say they won maybe like 14-5 or something. And Sizemore actually did hit a solo home run in the top half of the 8th inning. Came out all puffy chested and everything for the bottom half of the 8th inning, at which point I told him, hey, Grady, I'll be sure to take a picture of the scoreboard and send it to Donna so she can see how you did tonight.
You gotta be bleeping me.
But, look, at the end of the day here, he can't be trusted. We know this. I mean, that's just all there is to it.
Steven's story time is one of my favorite times on this show. It's unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Unfreaking believable. I just, when you ask if this is an inside job, I mean, how many Twins do we have in the clubhouse? I don't know what that answer is. Steven, you got a number? You normally track these things.
We've got Drew Butera in there, and I know there was, it was kind of some speculation.
Marcus Thames on the Tigers front, right?
Yeah. Yep. So, we obviously got him. Obviously, we've got the
Jim Tomei up in the front office.
We're down the Royals, though.
We are. They were really cleaned out here today.
But Sisson taking over as bench coach, that is a strong Royals connection, being at the right hand of Grady Sizemore. So you got to remember, the pillars are still in place for this inside job.
That's true. There's really not a historic White Sox presence in this clubhouse right now. Do you guys feel that makes a difference in bringing the TW and the fire and the passion?
I mean,
Well,
it doesn't matter right now for this season, but
Do you guys want some of that back?
you'd probably want the best baseball minds around if you're really looking to turn this thing around. But if you had to give me an option between the inside job and some White Sox connection, I'd prefer at least some White Sox connection if those are the two options. But other than that, just hire the best people, right? Plenty more discussion about that down the road, but that would just be right off the bat.
I think it is interesting. I mean, there is one guy with a very notable White Sox connection that has getting his name thrown around for the job a lot of late, and I may or may not have written some words about that over at a website called ontapsportsnet.com maybe a week or so ago. But this thing isn't really going away, just kind of going and seeing some of the quotes from White Sox legend AJ Pierzynski on an almost daily basis on the Foul Territory podcast. So I think that this is something that is going to kind of persist here throughout the course of the winter. I know he was on AM 1000 earlier this afternoon kind of talking about things. But I will say this, and, Anthony, we talked about this, on a show recently here. I don't automatically dismiss the idea the way that, you would with a lot of other guys. And he's saying a lot of right things of late, just talking about how backwards the organization is and the need for change and the need to do things differently. And I think that's a fresh perspective that needs to be brought into this organization here. And, he even commented today that he thinks that maybe part of the reason why he isn't getting and hasn't gotten a lot of love to rejoin the organization, so to speak, in a greater capacity is because he has been so outspoken about how backwards things have been. So just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, you just wonder, would that be allowed back in? I'm not expecting anyone to answer that here, but that's, once again, like I said, those thoughts that swirl in your mind while Jerry Reinsdorf still owns this team. That's what creeps into my mind, at least. I'm assuming you guys are somewhere in the same ballpark there.
I would think so. I mean, there's some history there between AJ Pierzynski and Jerry Reinsdorf. Don't know where they sit right now, but Steve, you sent something out today when Bob Nightingale threw out Skip's name as a possibility for the Chicago White Sox job. And we know how it played out with TLR. The original guy that Bob sort of painted for this job, if we go back just a week or two, was AJ Pierzynski. So it was interesting to me today that AJ's name wasn't mentioned by Bob, that it was Skip, but you'd have to think that there's some, I don't know, at least thought process going on within the White Sox organization that AJ Pierzynski could potentially be a fit, especially because you watch AJ on X right now, or on Foul Territory. He's adding kerosene to the fire when it comes to this stuff. And that's a different speed than White Sox fans are used to. But isn't that sort of the exact change that this organization needs? Why do we all celebrate the Ozzie Guillen stuff? Because he tells you what's going on and gives you a counter viewpoint to everything that's happening. I like how AJ aligns with this. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I definitely think that where there's smoke, there's some sort of fire, and that there's at least some sort of conversation taking place between the two parties.
The one thing that just, kind of concerns me a little bit is Bob, directly putting out Skip Schumacher's name as a leading candidate for that. And he meets some of the criteria that Chris gets talked about being an external hire.
Yeah, but you could
in uniform, in a dugout, right?
In uniform, in a dugout. And, he's also got something very important on his side that needs to be taken into consideration. He is a favorite of TLR.
TLR's voice is probably involved in these conversations as well, and we
sadly yes.
Yeah, sure. We've seen this before, and we've been down this road, Steve. there is always going to be two contrasting viewpoints over the direction of this franchise as long as Jerry Reinsdorf is the owner.
I mean, I think there's a pretty uniform thought process on the direction of the organization from most people as it relates to.
I'm not saying from fans, but within the organization, the Kenny camp versus the Rick camp, they've got their own divide within this front office already. At least it feels that way.
Wasn't that all supposed to be resolved?
I don't know that there is.
The sole decision maker. They went as far as to put that in the press release.
So is Chris Getz really in control with this?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, wouldn't that have been the objective, though, if they went as far to, put that language out there? That would have been my question. But I agree. I mean, I agree. I think there will be a schism there that exists and still will exist. Maybe not in a Kenny versus Rick sort of, two front office heads going head to head, but it's more the shadow government, right? We're going deep state. Let me get that tinfoil hat.
If you want to make Steve sit up at night, it's TLR versus Chris Getz.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not really. It's not going to make me sit up at night. I mean, at the end of the day, I know that if TLR wants something, he will go to the guy in charge and he will be listened to. And odds are it will be wrong because we saw how he destroyed the Arizona Diamondbacks organization when he was in charge of things. So, and
this feels like unfair banter to me.
Hey, you guys brought up TLR, and I think we're kind of moving on right now. This conversation is transitioning more towards, names that have been thrown out there, especially considering they're from Boob, the media mouthpiece of Jerry Reinsdorf. We all know that. But since you brought up TLR, it made me think of something. Grady Sizemore is getting this crack at it, and sure, lost season, whatever. Maybe it's a potential to connect with some of the players, but how hilarious would it be if you just reinstall TLR, but you let him coach from the press box like an offensive coordinator in football? Say, yeah, we're up, ahead of them 1-2. Go ahead, walk him, put him on first. Signal down.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I kind of half jokingly tweeted out earlier today that I would be in favor of them actually giving the job to TLR again so that he would get some more losses on his resume here to close out this season.
I mean, that would have to take TLR to accept that role. I don't know if there's very many people who want to coach the Chicago White Sox for the remainder of this season.
Well, that's why I said you can accommodate it then a little bit. Okay. The health issues we ran into, obviously we know about those. So they'll let him go from the press box. Like I said, offensive coordinator. It'd be innovative.
Didn't Jose Abreu say that he wanted to sit out the last game so that he can learn how to be a coach?
Yeah, we saw.
I don't think he's got a job right now.
More lies from the hashtag trader.
Yeah, he doesn't have a job right now. Why is he not in consideration for this role?
We're going down the rabbit hole here. Thoughts on Grady Sizemore, though? I know it's just interim here, but hey, he was $15 an hour position with the Diamondbacks last year, just because that was like the only thing open there, and then he joins as a major league coach. Obviously, dealing a bit with outfielders, some base running stuff this year, and now just gets thrust into this role here. Thoughts on this? I'm actually kind of interested to see, like I said, maybe just a chance to connect with some of the players, because I feel like what we were witnessing over these dog days of summer so far were basically players essentially shutting Grifol out. Not that he had a great message to deliver, but you can see that's not a team that was playing for a united cause there. Any thoughts? Sizemore impact here, just down the stretch.
It's an interesting exercise to do right now. I was kind of hearing some things through the grapevine a little bit that Charlie Montoyo just kind of wasn't really being looked at necessarily for this because he didn't really want to do post-game media and pre-game media every day. He apparently absolutely despised doing that during his time when he was manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. So it was kind of interesting to see that, and just to see him, Mike Tosar, and Eddie Rodriguez all get the boot with Mr. Clean in there, just cleaning house, so to speak. No pun intended there. But, I think the idea of going to Sizemore,
cleaning the scrubbing bubbles.
Yeah, going to Sizemore, or had they looked at and thought about maybe Drew Butera or something, it's fine. I mean, look, there's 45 games left. It's not going to have any material impact on the fate of this season here. So what the hell? Why not? It doesn't really matter that much ultimately. Let's be real about this.
I'm sort of with Steve. This is just going to wind up a trivia question somewhere down the line. We're going to be talking about
this will be great for Immaculate Grid down the day if they have like manager. Add some of those in there.
Yeah, like who spent under 50 games as a Chicago White Sox manager? Like
Don Cooper.
Yeah. Don Cooper's on there.
Miguel Cairo.
Miguel Cairo. You can also throw Grady Sizemore into that list.
Yeah.
Now. So
up those rarity scores.
Yeah. That's
good for the fans, I guess. Yeah.
It is. I don't really think too much into this. The rest of the season is sort of just gone. Like there's still time.
Right.
The sad part is there's still time for Grady Sizemore now to hold the MLB record for most losses in a row. So like outside of that, like what really matters here? I mean, if he meets extra players, gets some extra experience doing this, good for him and his personal development. But from the White Sox side, there's really not much that can be salvaged, especially with the fact that I don't believe we are going to go into next season with Grady Sizemore as the manager of this team. And I don't think anybody here believes that. So
there's only one thing that can be salvaged, and that's finding a way to win 15 baseball games, which I don't see happening. But that is something that they should be playing for. If anybody in that clubhouse has any fucking pride at all, that's what they should be focused on, finding a way to win 15 baseball games. Again, I don't like the odds. Anthony, we've talked about the schedule upcoming here for the rest of the way, but take it one day at a time and try to find a way to knock off 15 wins out of these remaining 45 games.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see that, Steve. I'm on that. I know it's up to you as a fan what you want to root for, Steve, although I think you made the case for to not root against historic futility. I would rather the franchise that I root for not be in the history books as the worst team of all time. I know some people say that, it should send a message to Jerry and when you want to go. I don't think that's changing anything there. So I would like to see them amass 15 wins here down the stretch as well, Steve. But one thing that may actually have a little bit of impact here is not so much Grady Sizemore being installed, but the fact that Pedro Grifol is gone. Does this give Oscar Colas an actual chance to come back up to the big league? Could you possibly, since Jershly is now on the staff as the major league third base coach, right? Could you potentially see some of the Charlotte names here at the end of the year besides the usual September call-ups?
I don't know if you saw this or not before we hopped on here, but he was pulled down in Louisville. So, might be a real tough scene for Anthony over at the Marchese household here coming up.
We all know that Oscar Colas was Pedro Grifol's favorite baseball player during his tenure here.
Boombox. Never forget. Baseball
boombox. I can't speak for Gavin Sheets doing anything of note in the last, it's been almost 4 months now since he's been relevant. So
all his meaningful production came in April.
It did. Most of it came in April. There's been a couple of spots where he's been all right, but other than that, Andrew Vaughn's picked it up, and you're only as good as your last envelope, Johnny. And right now the envelopes aren't coming in great for Mr. Gavin Sheets. So you know what? Why not give Oscar Colas a shot? I don't believe in Oscar Colas. I don't think either of you guys do either.
Not
going to change anything?
No, but I think
the circumstances that would, possibly prevent a call-up have changed, though.
Yeah,
so that's why I ask. That's why I ask.
I can foresee that on the horizon.
I think they just need to find out if he can be a bench player going forward.
Right. Do we really want one position outfield bench players?
You do need.
This was the Cuban Ohtani.
Well,
if that's not an indictment on the front office, I don't know what is.
There are a lot of indictments on the front office. Let's be real about this.
Bring Colas up. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Anything else notable, Steve? I know you mentioned the names that departed: Eddie Rodriguez, Mike Tosar, among that group that's on the outs here. Anything notable on your front from the guys that will be replacing them, or reasons why? I know you mentioned Charlie Montoyo about his disdain for media interaction, but anything else on that front so we can wrap up the coaching changes here?
There's not really anything left from that perspective here. The one thing that I just want to kind of see happen with all of this, whomever that next manager is, whether it's AJ, whether it's Skip Schumacher, let them come in and let them assemble their staff. We saw this after the 2020 season.
Except for Ethan Katz.
No.
Pitching coaches here live forever.
No, and that's the exact name that I was going to bring up here. He was hired before TLR got the job, and he's, lived now through the Pedro Grifol era. We saw how many administrations Don Cooper was able to live through. Whomever they select to be their next manager should be able to come in and assemble their coaching staff. If they want to have Ethan Katz on board after having a conversation with him, if they want to have Marcus Timms on board after having a conversation with him, that's their prerogative. But don't saddle them with these guys here. Let them make their own choices. Let them assemble their own staffs. This is such a weird White Sox thing to do all the time, where they just say, okay, these coaches are here. They're staying. You can't do anything about that. You got to figure it out. Enough of that bullshit.
So if a new coach came in here and said, I don't fucking like what Brian Bannister is preaching.
Brian Bannister's not in the dugout. Brian Bannister's on the player development side of it. That's not a decision that is in the manager's purview. That is a Chris Getz decision right there. That's not for the on-field manager to decide.
I forgot you were
all right. Yeah. Now that Grifol's gone, he's a Getz guy solely because he brought on Brian Bannister. That we need to pivot to that, Tony.
We just like that was confirmation there for me, Johnny. I don't know who everyone reports to.
We're just shifting down the G's here.
Yeah.
Press and shift on my keyboard here. Yeah.
It's the same organizational top down. So if Chris Getz has a conversation with the guy that he just hired, and he says you can pick your whole staff. But then, I would think that Brian Bannister has some say in who the pitching coach is, wouldn't you? If he's the pitching development director?
To an extent, I would think he's at least involved in a conversation here. But again, Bannister's function is to get and to really oversee the development at the minor league level. That's his function. That's not something.
He had nothing to do with anybody at the major league level this year. But then you tweet out all the time. If Michael Kopech just listened to Brian Bannister this whole entire time, but now he doesn't all of a sudden have any impact on the major league roster, explain that to me.
Okay, let me clarify this. I'll try to break this down for you as simply as I can. Okay,
do it in Italian, please, so I can understand.
Okay, hey, I think what Brian Bannister has to do here, I think his function, what he does every single day here in between, spaghetti and all of that, and then, maybe some pasta fagioli, is that, he has to figure out an individual pitching development plan for each one of the pitches. Hey,
including Major League.
I think to an extent, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Shouldn't that be the pitching coach's job, though? Like, why does we never had a guy over was Don Cooper pulling double duty?
Hierarchies change, things evolve.
Yeah. They technically had two executives running. They had two executives running the show before.
Starters can't go 7 innings, and pitching coaches can't handle what they used to. I mean, we're just becoming weaker as humans. The first baseball team to employ the AI pitching coach.
I think Steve's on to something with the organizational structure here. Go back to what you had mentioned, the schism, Rick Hahn versus Kenny Williams. Well, now they said the singular decision maker, and guess what? Then he picks his guys down the line, Barfield being on more player development focused side, and then Bannister, obviously the pitching czar, so to say, right? I will give Steven this one that it has evolved.
Hey, Johnny, here's a simple solution. Do what the Blackhawks do and do like the TV show that's been on NBC for a while. The behind the scenes stuff. Give me some behind the scenes footage
every shift,
every shift.
Yeah,
give me some behind the Brian Campbell's showing up there on the player development side, talking about what he's doing with the minor league guys. Why not give
Johnny
me
Oduya there too? That's good.
Why not give me 1 hour every month of what Brian Bannister's working on to make me excited as a White Sox fan to tune into this and say, this is development.
I'd like to see that all around. I'd like to see what Barfield's doing in terms of communication with the minor league levels too there, because that has always been a sticking point for me, is when is player development going to get fixed with this organization? And you would hope, I don't think it's way too early to say yes or no on Barfield right now, but you'd like to see some returns, right? Or at least the process of going through that and trying to better this thing, because as of right now, you get guys coming up and still struggling, and I get it. It's amid a season that's odd and some guys rushed and all of that, but at some point here, you're gonna have to have some homegrown talent. So I'd like to see that on that front, and I agree, the behind the scenes view would be cool.
And I think you make kind of an interesting point there, Jonathan, and something that I took from Get's commentary this afternoon, where he was talking about the player development side and talking about the need to develop players offensively. And, he didn't come out and say these exact words here, but basically said that they need to find someone on the hitting side akin to what Bannister is doing on the pitching side. He was touting the developments of the pitching at the minor league level here, but we haven't seen those results on the positional side. We've seen the struggles of Colson Montgomery, and we haven't really seen a lot of guys, maybe with the exception of Edgar Caro, take a step forward this season in the batter's box. And so they need to kind of do that. They need to find somebody to really kind of try to overhaul the organizational messaging from an offensive approach standpoint. And, it will be fascinating to see if going and trying to find someone from another organization is going to come to fruition here, because I think we can all agree that over the course of the last 10 to 15 years here, this team offensively has not gotten the job done, as we like to say in the business.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, you get that thing structured correctly, and then, hopefully it churns out results. Part of that's talent acquisition too, drafting well, make sure you're picking up the right guys in terms of international free agency, guys that you sign, because I just want to reiterate, player development does not stop once you reach major league level. So it needs to be a message from top down, whatever it may be. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. Probably some more shake up, at least a little bit, not as drastic as the Kenny Rick last year, but I would imagine, especially when you're talking new manager, and you would hope that he's able to pick his staff there. So that about does it on the coaching front changes, guys. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw this week actually on the field. They were heading towards it, man. They were heading towards it, and we could have been in this position right now talking about being on the verge of setting the all-time MLB record. But that Tuesday night, I said it. I tried to speak it into existence, and luckily it happened. Tonight was the night. Tuesday was the night. It happened. They broke the streak. That was the most I've celebrated a win, maybe since our first one of the season, I would say. I don't know about you guys.
It was a much needed victory. I know a lot of people were kind of talking about this whole wanting to have that streak. Again, I don't know why you would want the team that you support to have that distinction tied to them. So to actually see, my guy, Jonathan Cannon, be the stopper on Tuesday night was very encouraging for me. Again, in Bannister we trust, lest we forget. But the idea of them going out to Oakland, a place that has been a house of horrors, and then dropping 3 in a row and coming home and potentially setting that record on your home field, I just can't understand why anybody would want that, because ultimately it's not going to have this desired impact to spur Jerry Reinsdorf to make these changes that you think it's going to. So rooting for losses, rooting for historic futility, it just doesn't make sense to me. So to see them actually come through and win a baseball game, it was a very welcome sight.
I'm in agreement with the fact that I didn't want to see them reach historic futility, especially in that setting. I think coming home against the Chicago Cubs would have been something that like you're gonna have to listen to if you're a White Sox fan that resides in Chicago. You're gonna have to listen to your, your Cub fan uncle talk about that for like the next 15 years. Doesn't matter if you go win a division, if you don't bring home the next championship. That's the stuff that can set back a fan base, influence people within families for decades to just have that happen inner city. However, I can also see where people are so fed up with this product that is on the field right now that they want to see this organization wear some sort of scarlet letter, even if you're a White Sox fan, some sort of scarlet letter for the rest of history that says this was a fucking abysmal failure. And, it's not just Jerry Reinsdorf. It's Chris Gutz. It was Pedro Grifol up until today when he was let go, that I think a lot of people, projected that out towards and said, hey, you should have to wear this because this is the worst product I've ever seen. And I know for a fact in my lifetime, this is the worst baseball team I've ever watched. I think you guys can both say the same thing. There's no other White Sox team that has been this fucking horrible that you've had to watch. So I can see where people wanted them to wear that a little bit. I just didn't want to see it come at home against the Chicago Cubs on a Friday night in August with a fireworks show afterwards. It would kind of be the most embarrassing thing for them, and I'm happy they don't have to go through it. But could you imagine being like a stadium worker that's sitting there, like has to like put on the fireworks show after this team just set the record in Major League Baseball, and you've got to sit there and light off fireworks for a bunch of people? That shit would be so mind-blowingly. I can't even comprehend having to do something like that. Or if that's like the first game you've taken your family to and you're sitting there like, all right, just got my kids out to a game, watching the first game of the season because I don't want to bring my family here. Let's get out there for a fireworks Sox Cubs game. Okay, now this is a major league history breaking losing streak. And I've got to sit here and put my kids through a fireworks show afterwards. There were so many bad things that could have happened with that. I just didn't want any of that bad juju. So that's sort of where I'm at with it. I don't want to see them be the worst team in baseball. I don't think anybody does. But I think that there is a segment of fans right now that believe they should wear this more than anything else. And that I think that record, while it wouldn't have changed anything, it would have left a significant legacy on Jerry Reinsdorf's Wikipedia page, even long after he's gone, that people would look back at and say, that's how bad it got.
Well, it's so bad that Christopher Mad Dog Russo was even ripping on Jerry today. I mean,
that's a guy.
If we're getting to that level now where people in New York, Russo, somebody who just never pays any attention to the White Sox at all, if he's realizing this and if he's calling out Jerry Reinsdorf, that's ultimately kind of what it takes. Like, that's the only time that Jerry ever really gives a shit is when national people publicly embarrass him.
Yeah.
We saw that after The Last Dance. That's kind of what this is going to have to take. So, if Russo continues to pile on, if, guys like Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal continue to pile on him, that's the type of thing that could get him to say, oh shit, now I have to actually get off my fucking ass and do something.
Yep. Steve, I'm glad you brought that up because I saw a whole lot of, and I understand the disdain for Chris Russo, and he may just be a East Coast biased, loudmouth, and he is, but it's his show and he can talk about what he wants. And lately, he's been dedicating a little bit more time to the White Sox. Granted, it's for the reasons that you don't want to see as an organization. But if that is what it takes, I'm all for it. I know people say, oh, get him off my timeline. I don't want to see that. We don't care what his opinion is on this and that. It's, once again, it's his show. And if that, is bringing it more into the spotlight, because whether you like it or not, it's on MLB Network. at a future time, and it's going to get clipped like that, posted out there for the world to see. I don't really have any qualms with it, and you can disagree with Chris Russo all you want, but seeing that there, like you had said, Steve, goes back to your point of maybe it might be time to get off his ass. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but that type of pressure in the old school mind, I feel like at least has some sort of impact. Even if he doesn't act on it, he's at least thinking about it.
Yeah, because we know, if nothing else, all he does really want is to have his name, in lights in a positive manner. He wants to be showered with praise and affirmation about what a great, kind person he is. And, I'm sure he loves hearing all these stories about just how loyal he is to people in his organization and everything. Fuck that. Hang some fucking banners.
Speaking of banners, the banners that went down, I saw that. I didn't even really think about it, but because I think it was B-Sun put out the Photoshop of the losing streak numbers, haha, funny at first. Then I saw someone in the replies was like, it was Austin's like, and he had said what he's like, remember after 2021 he was too cheap to update the banners, so he just took them down from the light poles and just left those little tiny plaques on that brick wall of the
now
left field.
Now there's just a little painting there on the brick wall.
I didn't even really put two and two together after the fact. I was just like, damn, it sucks that those are gone, but it makes a lot of sense now.
The jokes write themselves. I mean, you talk about the plaques on the wall. I'm pretty sure there's still some signage up that says U.S. Cellular Field.
Ooh, yeah. At certain
in a couple of spots.
Yeah. In certain spots
find
of the ballpark, you can find them. Yeah.
You can find them.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. One other thought that I had swirling around in my head, since we haven't really discussed it too much. Early thoughts on the return, Miguel Vargas. I know there's more to that return in terms of minor league depth there, but I just wanted to get some first impressions. Obviously, it sucks going from a perennial contender you came up with in the Dodgers coming to this situation here. But I think there is a little pop in the bat. I don't know if we should start getting over the moon for this guy, though, because when Chris Cat says he's a middle of the order bat guy, I think on a legitimate team, this sounds more like a good 7, 8, 9 hitter, right? That's just where I initially stood on that.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit on Sunday here. I think that the return is a little bit underwhelming, and I think if you look at it just from the perspective of the Dodgers went and acquired Tommy Edman, a guy that is still on the injured list to be their swing utility man, essentially taking playing time and potential at bats away from Miguel Vargas. So if they're willing to bring in a guy like Tommy Edman to fill that role, that's a little concerning to me. There is some pop in the bat. We did see the one home run in the game against Minnesota, but been a lot of strikeouts to this point here, and defensively he's had some miscues out there in the outfield already. I don't think that there's a true defined position for him that he plays particularly well. And Johnny, you talk about, it's got to be tough to go from an actual forward-thinking organization, one that does things the right way and one that is successful, to this shit show. Well, as the old saying goes, be the change that you want to see in the world.
The White Sox had a potential middle-of-the-order bat last year, Johnny. They traded him away at the deadline. His name was Jake Berger.
I'm gonna be started on that. Any prospect glazers that are trying to talk up Jake Eater? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear Jake Eater's name. The guy sucks. He sucked in the minor leagues this year. He was a COVID year draft pick. Absolute crapshoot.
So you had a middle of the order guy there.
I don't want to hear about Jake Eater.
I've heard that Eloy Jimenez was a middle of the order bat. He looks like a middle of the order bat out in Baltimore.
Still a lot of singles.
Yeah.
Hey, he looks energized. We'll leave it at that. It's not going to last. I hope it doesn't last. I don't want it to last. If it lasts, I think we're going to all Be very sad. Vargas, for a middle of the order bat, he's hit leadoff quite a bit. And we haven't seen any Grady Sizemore lineups yet, so we don't know where he's going to hit. But if it's the same people making the lineup, which it might be, you might still see Vargas hitting 1-2 somewhere in that range for the remainder of the season. I'm not sold on this guy one bit. I still think the return was light in these deals.
Yeah.
Like way too light. I wish you didn't have to package anything with Eric Fetty.
Right.
And I feel like, there's going to be some bias on Vargas, and I'm in this camp too. I'm going to be biased on it because I feel like the return on the trade was light. So he needs to exceed some expectations, maybe over what his prospect profile was, in order for me to feel like this was a justified move. That's not fair to the kid, but at the same point in time, this is, as our boy Matt in the comments said, another example of Sox scouts failing this one. I don't know if it's as much as just the scouts as it is the GM in one of his first deadline moves, maybe getting a little taken advantage of, not knowing the industry as much. And hopefully Chris Getz learns from our standpoint here to not make that same mistake in the future. But I feel like this one was sort of a botched, good plan, poor execution. I think with that deal is really what I wrap it up with. You set yourself up right, and you just didn't execute on the back end of it. Even if Vargas turns into you guys mentioned Oscar Colas. Is he a bench outfield bat? Well, I hope Vargas is better than that. Like, there can only be so many of those guys on the team. So I don't know. I'm not really comfortable with that return. Not comfortable with what he's going to provide. The one of the main reasons, and Steven, you were the one that sent me this. Like, go look at the splits. Go look at the splits, and the stats are the stats.
Yeah, we'll have to see what it pans out to, but he'll be around. He'll be around as a young player here. So we'll see that develops into. I would agree with your assessment on that, Tony, though. In my opinion, it was Chris Getz as a first-timer didn't know how to properly shop Eric Fetty. And I know some can point to the market and that starters were surprisingly not, being extremely sought after. More teams felt comfortable with their pitching, but as one of the best assets that was out there, I agree that you shouldn't have had to go 3 teams on it and attach 2 other trade chips. Not that you were getting the world for Tommy Pham or Michael Kopech, but I feel like you could have gotten a level of that return for Eric Fetty alone. So we'll see what the future holds. All right, take a look at what's on tap next, guys. Cubes are coming to the south side. It's only 2-game series. You have an off day Sunday, but Garrett Crochet take them out Friday against Jameson Taillon, and Saturday will be Chris Flexen against Justin Steele for the Cubs. Thoughts on the series, predictions? How's it going down?
The Cubes are starting to play a little bit better baseball here. They took 2 out of 3 from those losers from Canada South here over the last couple of days. Been swinging the bats a little bit better here. And, look, with Crochet right now, we're in the decline phase of his season. I don't know that we're going to get more than 4 innings out of him at any start for the rest of the way here. So they're obviously looking to manage that as much as they possibly can. So, even if he's able to leave with a lead, asking this bullpen and this ragtag group to try to cover 15 outs at this point, that is a very tall order. So I don't feel particularly good about that. And then, the fact that we're going to have to see Chris Flexen pitching the game on Saturday against Justin Steele, I don't feel particularly good about it. It would be nice if this team could find a way to steal a game on their home field, but I'm not overly confident in it. In fact, I'm not confident at all.
I'm with Steven. I'm not confident riding into this series. Justin Steele is pitched pretty well this season. The type of pitcher that's going to probably carve through this White Sox lineup and go 7, something that we don't get to see very often. Stephen, you brought up that Crochet might not go more than 4 in any of these starts. Makes me sort of wonder what your thoughts are on, does it make sense to potentially make a bullpen move here and pair him with another starter who's an opener and let him take, the third time through the order, fourth time through the order? If you're only going to get 3 to 4 out of Garrett Crochet in order to maximize some strategy here to pile up some wins, maybe you throw him behind Flexen, or even, I don't know if Drew Thorpe's going to come back this season, but, you pair him up with another starter, and at least you can book yourself 4-4, go 8, and only have to rely on that bullpen for 1. I'm not comfortable turning the game over to our bullpen on a Garrett Crochet start. You might throw 3 shutout innings, give up 1-2 runs. I don't like the way that sets up for the Chicago White Sox right now, especially with that bullpen when you've got to cover 5 innings of work. So not confident in this series at all, Johnny.
Yep, I agree with your assessment, but as to not be boring, I will say not the new manager bump, but just the Pedro Grifol is gone. The black cloud, at least in the dugout. There's more to the organization, but in the dugout, black cloud is gone. I will give that bump 1 win at some point this weekend. I don't know how it's going to happen. It's going to have to be miraculous, but just to change it up here, I'll go with 1. Split the series against the Cubes this weekend. So that's about it here at Sox on Tap. We appreciate you tuning in. It's Pedrover. Mr. Clean is gone. We'll be back with you at some point here in the near future. Before we get on out of here, Steve, give me a final thought, and then you, Tony. We'll wrap it up.
Final thoughts. They were able to avoid history this past week, which was a good thing, despite what you might see on the interwebs here. As I talked about earlier, the only thing that we are really left to see this team play for is to try to avoid history one final time. Try to find a way to scratch 15 wins out of this remaining 45. I would love to see that happen. I'm not confident in it. Start that off this weekend here. Find a way to win a baseball game against these suckwads from the north side and go from there.
Great to be back with a full boat show here tonight here at Sox on Tap. Thank you, boys, for talking some White Sox baseball here. Cheers, crack them, enjoy them. It's the start of the weekend, Johnny. Final thought on this Pedro Grifol era. I am so glad that it is over.
Are we flushing it?
I think, yes, we are. It's time to flush that era of White Sox baseball and move on to better times, hopefully, for all of us involved, including myself. So flush it one last time. You got to get out tomorrow and prepare to kick some ass at 7:10.
Yeah. One of those great clips that came about during the Pedro Grifol era. Negative 90s in this one. I never had faith in Chris Getz from the beginning. He botched his first trade deadline, in my opinion, and I think he'll botch his manager hire. I know there's some rumblings. AJ said that he pushed hard for Grifol. Well, if so, that's the case. That was already, kind of a half strike in his book. Just like I had prepared myself mentally going into that trade deadline. I don't have faith in this guy. I don't think he should be in this position, just the way that it all came about, the internal hire, and you saw him get taken advantage of there. Even though he's not really competing, with anyone. Who knows, maybe a few other manager jobs open up on the Marlins, rumors about that. Either way, I don't have faith in his decision-making there. So I'm not going to get up for the letdown on this next manager hire here. So, hate to bring it all down at the end here, but that's just my honest final thoughts for this episode of Sox on Tap. We appreciate all of you tuning in at home. Make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet. Follow us on the socials at Sox on Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet there. And as always, check out our written content at ontapsportsnet.com. Until next time, White Sox forever.
White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.